All right, in this video, we're going to go through all the details of the goings-on in the Day 8, Round 7 of the Copa versus Craig Wright Satoshi Nakamoto trial and BTC Core. We're going to make some predictions on and calls on who actually was successful today, and also to go through the kind of the case management for what is to come with Wright's last day on the stand today on his first appearance, which he may be recalled on. So, we had Jonathan Hough, who's the opposing counsel for the counsel for Copa. He's the barrister. Begin cross again on Wright, and so I want to kind of recap this. I got a timeline of exactly what happened, and we had a new barrister come in. So yeah, Wright, Hough started out by going through documents that Dr. Wright had disclosed previously, and stating that he didn't claim that they were forgeries, and this was a point that had been really beaten home. And basically there was a pile of documents that Wright had disclosed, right? This is what Wright's claiming in previous litigation, including the Kleiman case, that had been in third parties' hands. And so he just did an all-out data dump on all the files on the opposing counsel. Wright claims that in his, specifically, he claims he said, revealed fakes on the discovery platform categorically on that platform. He says that on a discovery platform, he revealed these documents had been breached into third parties, therefore they couldn't be trusted. And then Jonathan Hough for Copa is claiming, well, we didn't get notice of that. Why didn't you tell us about that? He says, well, I don't know what my solicitors told you. Back and forth on this. So this point was really, beat to death. It seemed to really get Jonathan Hough very frustrated here, because ultimately Wright's saying that he didn't even have any control over those files. They were in third parties' hands, and he had to disclose those because they had been in the prior litigation over at Kleiman, in the Kleiman case. Wright claimed that they went through the signing about the Genesis blocks, and Wright claimed actually in the 2016 period, when he had the Gavin Andresen sign. Wright claimed that it was his intent to sign blocks 1 and 9 from the Genesis block only to prove his identity, only if he could first prove his identity and with his proof package first. And he was extremely passionate about this, stating that this proof package, which is his life's work, had to have been proven first on the record. However, Wright's claiming that because of McGregor apparently, was basically managing him at this time and did not allow that to happen. Therefore, the signing didn't go well. So then they started talking about the Gavin Andresen signing, and Wright stated that he didn't have access to the encrypt email at the time of the signing. There were some emails that were going back and forth from apparently Wright's encrypt email. This is prior to Enchain, to other parties like Gavin Andresen and other people. Then Wright's claiming, well, I didn't even have access to that email. So somebody was writing that. I don't know who they were, and they were sending those emails. And then he asked about Stephen Matthews. He was on the email chain. He said, well, Stephen Matthews, counsel Jonathan Hough asked Wright about Stephen Matthews. He's saying, well, Stephen Matthews was acting really weird that day, really funny, and no wonder why. Now he realizes, well, because he didn't even write those emails. That wasn't even his email. Apparently his email at Encrypt had been cut off. He had a different email at that time. Hough got back into the Dr. Madden rebuttal evidence, and Wright argued the same point that, it's not even expert testimony from Madden. However, the court, it's a real handicap for Wright, because he can't consider Wright's rebuttal evidence on his own testimony to Madden. And so Wright seems to be handicapped on that. There's been no back and forth, and it seems like that's just a major problem that Wright's going to have to overcome. Hough reviewed the Gavin Andresen signing event in the Matonis report, that Wright had put forward, and noting that Dr. Wright's expert did not raise any issues that Dr. Wright now disposes on the stand. He's stating that Dr. Wright said that he requested additional experts from his solicitors, but didn't happen. So Wright's claiming to saying he had wanted extra experts who knew about Citrix, but for whatever reason, that didn't happen. He has Dr. Gao, who's an expert on Bitcoin overall. However, may not be strong enough to rebut this specific evidence in the Madden report. Dr. Wright also claimed that he impulsively destroyed the hard drive file containing keys, and he passionately talked about this, where he was stomping on the file and smashing it, against something with a hammer, and he just talked about how it was a rage. He was in a bloody rage is some of the words he used. And he then also talked briefly about Ayre Hansen, and Wright said that litigation was filed against Ayre Hansen in November, apparently by Enchain, and Wright made some bold statements about that. He also denied knowledge of the leaked emails from potentially from Ayre, encouraging him to sign. And Dr. Wright claims to have sold his shares in Enchain, but still received consulting payments from Enchain. But he stated that Mr. Ayre didn't directly fund his litigation. So there was a big stink online about how apparently there were emails, whether they're true or not, they're not in evidence. And I want to talk a little bit further about some of these things, because what Hough was trying to do, and he was unsuccessful at, so this was definitely a point for Wright. Hough was trying to get Wright to traverse onto these emails that Ayre apparently, allegedly, sent or were leaked by Ayre Hansen, whatever. It's unknown right now. He was trying to get Wright to admit to those emails, having knowledge about them and receiving them, to then get them into evidence. Wright testified that he had no knowledge of these emails that Calvin had written. He said he didn't even know about this. He didn't read. He said he's not reading Twitter and going on Twitter every day, following up with everything that's going on Twitter. He didn't even know. So apparently that's the claim that's made by Wright, and that's going to work towards his favor, because now these emails and these Twitter files, they're not getting in, at least not right now, because I don't see Calvin coming forward to testify to get him in, and I don't see anywhere else how they're going to get in. I don't see Ayre Hansen is going to come forward unless they get Matthews to potentially testify him to him later. He's going to be on there. So that'll probably come up later about these emails, potential leaked emails. He may have been on the chain as well. But Wright has completely testified that he's got no knowledge of those leaked emails. So at this point, we could pretty much cross that off the list of evidence. I know there was a lot of talk about that online. So, that's my call on that. Those emails are out. Wright made some interesting claims about 4 governments having signed up, and then Hough interrupted him. And he didn't necessarily say for what. However, they were in talks around his patents and about his life work. And then he made this claim about how 4 governments have already signed up, ... So I'll lead you to, let your imagination go as to what he meant by that, whether it was they've signed up for using BSV blockchain for CBDCs. They've signed up with Enchain. We don't know exactly what he meant by 4 governments have already signed up. So by that, he got cut off. He didn't get to testify any further. Hough also asked Wright if he would still claim to be Satoshi if he loses the case. Wright has been very audacious in the past online about his claims at times, according to the other side. And Hough wants to know, Dr. Wright, even if you lose this case, are you still going to be going around saying, I'm Satoshi? And Wright rebutted. He says, counsel, I don't care to be known as Satoshi. In fact, that's not at all my purpose. He's like, I'm only doing that because of this particular type of case. He described a different type of case, like a Cinderella case or something. I couldn't remember the term. I'd never heard of it before, but a different type of case that he was going to file. He said, but if I just filed that case, or if I just brought that claim, then you guys would only just force me into this Satoshi identity claim anyway. So we went ahead and met in the middle on this. So, his point is that he's like, at no time that I want to be known as Satoshi. I wanted to be hidden in private. And I wasn't until I was doxxed by some of your clients. He didn't name any names, but, he kind of hinted at some of your clients, counsel. He did state, Dr. Wright did state that he's got 60 patent cases ready to go in the US and UK, locked and loaded, if he loses this case. He said those will begin immediately. So for those who have been wondering, what's going on with the patent cases? When's that all going to happen? It sounds like Wright testified today that that's all part of the strategy that he has in his mind, that if he loses this case, then those 60 patent cases, will begin, UK and also the US. Copa then closed, Hough closed for Copa, and stating that Wright is not Satoshi Nakamoto. And Wright testified, yes, he is. So they went ahead and started. Then went into part 2 in the BTC Core barrister got up and they began cross, and Wright set out, immediately went into his terms of settlement with BTC Core. And it was kind of interesting at this point where he's like, in a way, going back saying, counsel, I'm willing to not, have you guys pay any money, have your clients pay any money to me at all, waive all damages, waive everything, as long as you will follow the current UK legislation, which apparently has been recently passed about digital assets. I haven't read it, but it might be, it's Wright's very attuned with it. He said, if your clients will follow that, and a couple of other conditions that he also wanted followed, then he said, we'll just go ahead and wrap this case. You guys don't have to pay anything at all. And counsel, barrister for BTC Core is rolling his eyes and nodding his head no, and then moving on. So they went ahead and started over in asking technical questions on Wright. This is the BTC Core barrister regarding the technical nuances about the Bitcoin software in an attempt to show that Wright didn't have the knowledge of being Satoshi Nakamoto. Wright denied each one of these allegations and said they were incorrect. And then he discussed the details of the Bitcoin software itself. And what was interesting about this cross was counsel for BTC Core was doing a lot of testifying. Now, here you would see objections flying. Objection, counsel's testifying. Objection, testifying. But for whatever reason, there was no objections going back and forth. What would happen was counsel for BTC Core would make a question and say, Dr. Wright, admit that that you had no knowledge of these files like Satoshi Nakamoto did. And Dr. Wright would make a long explanation. And then the barrister would say, that is wrong. That is absolutely wrong. That is false. That's a claim. That's testifying. He wouldn't ask a question. He would make a claim. So that is improper. It's just improper cross. So he needs some training. One of the wins the barrister did have on Wright was the use of electricity. This came up, and he started asking him about, do you have any other proof of power purchases that you made in 2009 to show all this massive electricity you claim to be consuming as Satoshi Nakamoto? And he says, all I've got here is this power bill under my wife's name, which was on our personal house, and it was very low. He said he couldn't get any access to information defense, which his companies had been on a different power grid for all this. And Wright claimed that his solicitors reached out to the power company to get those records, and they no longer keep them at 15 years back. So that was a bit of a blow to Wright. If apparently gets in, that will get in apparently on the electricity bill. He's only going to be able to show a small amount of electricity bill from 2009. Some interesting points about the WikiLeaks came up. If you notice way back in 2010, Satoshi raised some objections about WikiLeaks coming onto the Bitcoin protocol too early, and this came up in cross here with the barrister for BTC Core, it was an attempt to discredit Wright. He actually went through a blog post from 2011 where Wright talked about Bitcoin and had a spelling error. Wright claimed that it was a spell check automatically on the website that he was writing on the blog, and it was spelled Bitcoin with a space. And he says, well, that wasn't the same way that was written on the forum by Satoshi, is it? And he says, well, in certain parts of the forum it was. And he's like, you're only focusing on this one part. So there was rebuttal cross right there from Wright back and forth. But he was really serious to me about trying to get this stuff about WikiLeaks in, and how, Wright, you supported using WikiLeaks because Wright talked about it on another blog publicly, saying WikiLeaks is an option. They can use Bitcoin. And he supposedly supported it, Wright did at the time. And this is in 2011 on a blog post where WikiLeaks using Bitcoin with the misspelling or the capitalization was in there. However, Satoshi in 2010, he did not support the use of Bitcoin, of WikiLeaks on Bitcoin. So it was really trying to drive that point home that there was no connection between Wright and Satoshi at that time. Bitcoin Core, they closed pretty quick. They're done. At least for Wright, sounds like Wright's being reserved to call back as a witness, but they went over to Lord Gravinu, and he gets up and he says, well, Justice Mellor, my lord, do you have any questions for the witness? And then he did have questions. He went over some past testimony that Wright had. He went through a transcript, which was pretty detailed. Justice Mellor asked about the latex files and why Wright staff would have access to a white paper with his name on it. And this was particularly in the transcript where Wright testified to it in the past. And so this was really a moment on the hot seat with Wright. Well, he had the bright lights on him where the judge is asking him about, well, why did this white paper with your name on it get out and be released? And all of a sudden it's being floated out with your staff. He says, isn't that an important document? Why wouldn't that be put away somewhere else? And Wright says, well, I didn't think of it as a critical document at the time. He just said it wasn't critical to him. Justice Mellor also asked about the IP and asked really about how the IP related to the trust, because Wright's got these complicated trusts and they're owned by companies, and asking about, well, how is this IP related to all these trusts? And so Wright went into a very complicated explanation on that and seemed to satisfy the judge's question on that. But the question about the Bitcoin white paper that has Wright's name on it, says Craig Wright on top. It seemed to, Justice Mellor seemed to be he seemed to be very, how did I say it? It was a little bit, it was really grilling Wright on that. Like that was a big question. Well, why would you not have that hidden away somewhere? And, Wright just said that his staff got it and other people had a hold of it. And he said, why wouldn't you put that away in some, trust or a sacred file? And Wright just, said it wasn't the most important thing to him, at the time. So that's all he could say. So we'll see how that part plays out. There were some questions regarding privilege, from a gentleman on Twitter. He talked about how he goes by 2 Honesty, and he specializes in Bitcoin digital asset crypto recovery through the law in UK. And he asked about, he says, can anyone explain the importance of legal privilege in the context of the case, and how often would Wright be asked to be careful? So what was happening throughout the case is that Hough would say, stop right there, Dr. Wright. I don't want you to waive privilege. See, what happened in the past is Wright was going off on these long tangents about his prior attorneys, prior solicitors. Now he'd gone through 3 or 4 different sets of attorneys in law firms where he fired or moved on and parted ways. And so counsel was narrowing in on questions about, what had been happening with these prior attorneys in litigation. Now, at these points in the past few days, Lord Gravin would get up and he'd say, hey, wait a second, my lord, will you please ask my learned friend here to tread lightly on all these questions about prior counsel relationships, prior solicitor relationships with the witness, because Wright's going into what's called privilege, meaning attorney-client privilege is protected information. And so Wright innocently, according to Lord Gravin, was releasing some of that information. And so they were attempting to tread lightly because Wright would go off on a tangent and start talking about files, conversations, and documents with his prior attorneys, prior solicitors. Okay. And then at each time, Hough would say, stop right there. I don't want you to break privilege. And then sometimes Wright would say, well, I'm not doing that. They would go back into it. But so they were, it appeared that it was almost like it was a way for Hough, for Copa to stop Wright from rambling on these long tangents about, his past knowledge in cases and attorneys. He would say, oh, wait, stop right there. Don't talk about privilege. It was a way, it was used more of a handicap at the end there where Hough was raising the privilege potential, violation to stop Wright and basically to get him to shut up. So I think it was a little bit over exaggerated at the end. All right. So the case management, some of the things that are interesting at the end, what happened was we went into, the solicitor for Wright gets up, not Lord Gravin, the other guy gets up, and they then go through some case management. What's going to happen tomorrow? They're going to be back in court at 10:30. And he asked for time for instruction. So this all kind of fits together now with what's happening, because I was a little concerned why Wright wasn't going into what would be called like redirect from his own counsel. And I'm thinking like this doesn't make any sense. Why isn't he going into redirect right now? And so what they were doing is he asked for time for instruction from Wright. So now until 10:30 tomorrow morning, Wright's meeting with his attorneys, his solicitors, his barrister, Lord Gravino, and he's giving him instruction on what to do next. Where are they going to go next? Are they going to recall Wright on the stand now? Are they going to do cross or go? What's going to happen next? So they're literally, they gave no direction as to what's going to happen tomorrow exactly. They're waiting for instruction from Wright because he's been in the box and he's got no phone, he's got no connection, he can't talk to anybody while he's up there. So now he comes down from the stand tonight and he goes into a meeting with his attorneys and he gives them instruction. All right, here's what we want to do right now. And they're going to recap and debrief. And hopefully by tomorrow morning, the goal was that by 10:30, they're going to have some direction on how to proceed. That's literally where we're at. It's a cliffhanger. And so at the end of this video, we're coming to the end now. I am going to make a call here that it goes to Wright on a very narrow margin today. It wasn't like any gangbuster win on Wright or either side. However, the reason it's going to go to Wright is because there wasn't any major blows that Copa or BTC Core gained. You know, one of the things about BTC Core, they didn't bring up really much expert witness evidence. You know, there's just a lot of improper testimony from the barrister for BTC Core, which was very immature. And, they didn't go through expert evidence very well. They're just relying on what Copa did in the past, which is very strong. You got the unrebutted 2 reports, the Rosenthal and the Madden report. Those are huge wins for Copa and BTC Core right there. That's like setting their case up to win potentially. I know that's why we've been really even, and we're going to go. But ultimately, there wasn't any major blows for Copa that they landed, or BTC Core today that they landed. So therefore, being that Wright was on the stand, I mean, I'd say that he rebutted evidence. Right, he didn't make any fatal admissions that I could see. There wasn't any absolute, the only that we kind of went through was really uncomfortable. It looked like for Wright was when he was getting examined by Justice Mellor at the end about that Bitcoin white paper with his name on it. That was definitely, he wasn't sweating, but it was just like, he seemed like he was being scolded by the principal. Like, well, why the heck didn't you put that in a safe somewhere? You're saying it was just laying around and people were getting it, moving it around. And it just, Judge Miller had some doubt in his mind with that right there. And definitely so that was definitely a blow to Dr. Wright, along with, along with not having rebuttal evidence to, strong enough rebuttal evidence to the other expert I forgot to mention was a professor, a female professor, but that was another expert that Wright didn't really have rebuttal evidence to. I mean, so it's really hard to make a call today for Wright or Copa. I mean, Copa's got a really strong case with this additional expert. I mean, I'm kind of on the fence right now. I mean, I'm saying Wright, but in rethinking, in rethinking it, I would almost. There's additional expert evidence that was brought in today, and that was from this other professor. And Wright claims to not have proper rebuttal evidence to that either. That was Professor, I don't remember the name now. It's on my notes. Anyways, there's another professor that Wright didn't have proper rebuttal evidence to. He was claiming that they were, again, unqualified, but I've got to retract that. This does go to Copa because of that other expert that's looks like they're going to get in and not being rebutted. And so now Wright's setting a cliffhanger where, I really felt I forgot about that other expert. It wasn't in my notes, but because of that, I got to retract my statement. This does go to Copa, BTC Core rides with them. So round to Copa, that's going to be round 8, round 7, day 8. And so we were at 3-3, and now it's going to be 4-3. Copa at 4, Wright at 3, going into the next day. We don't really know what to expect tomorrow, so we're really kind of seeing who's going to be on the stand, what's going to happen, argument. Really, they're waiting on instruction from Wright at Shoesmith, which is his law firm. So we'll see where that goes, but I'm definitely making the call for Copa today because of that additional expert evidence that looks like it's not going to be rebutted properly from Wright. So that is problematic for Wright. So 4-3 Copa going into day 9 tomorrow on round 8. All right. So if you like this video, hit the like button, share the video, get the word out there. This is like one of the most comprehensive summaries of the entire day in detail, talking about privilege, answering these questions, and then recapping on all the goings on and what to expect. So super exciting day. I got an interview coming up with patent attorney David Pierce today. I got a great video that's going to be coming out with Crypto Rick. That's going to be coming out on Saturday, so stay tuned for that. That's going to be freaking awesome. It's phenomenal. You're going to love it. So watch for that. This guy is way out in a different direction than anything I talk about or know about. So really cool. Ask him a lot of questions about his knowledge on subject matter. And I'll do a short and, kind of preview it. But it's going to be Saturday that'll come out. And I am like literally back and forth with the Titan of blockchain, Mr. Gavin Andresen's assistant on scheduling. It's literally just, I know people say, oh, you're lying, it's not going to happen. But I actually am in communication with his assistant. We're just emailing back and forth trying to calendar the event. That's literally it. We are very close on getting it inked up and done. So that's coming. All right, so be sure to leave a comment, get this video, share the video, retweet the video if you get this, and I'll put a Handcash link with my information below. If you want to send BSV tips, it's Gavin at gavinmehl@handcash.io in the description. All right, and a playlist here, right around here, where you can watch all the recaps of all the videos that have been shot in the trial so far from day one to now. And it's definitely not over. All right, but this round's going to Copa. I got to be fair and honest with that additional expert evidence. It's just going to go to them. I'll see you guys at the top.